I was sitting on the balcony of a small cafe in the heart of the city, sipping an espresso that still carried the warmth of freshly brewed coffee. Below, the streets bustled with hurried footsteps and murmured conversations. It was an afternoon like any other, until my phone vibrated. The screen flashed with a familiar name. Mark. I stared at it for a few seconds, a strange sense of unease creeping in. Then, I pressed answer. Anna. His voice came through, and there was something unusual about the way he said my name. I'm calling to tell you something. I didn't respond. I waited. I want a divorce. The words were blunt, spoken without hesitation. I let them linger in the silence for a few seconds, as if deciding how I should feel. But there was nothing to decide. I've sold the company. His tone now carried the confidence of a man who had just closed a lucrative deal. Lauren and I are leaving to start over. Lauren. The name was far from unfamiliar. The woman Mark thought I didn't know about. The mistress he assumed I was too blind to see. I set my coffee cup down and gazed out at the city. The evening sun cast golden streaks across the pavement, stretching long shadows over the road. What was Mark expecting? A scream? A furious outburst? Or perhaps a single tear? I inhaled slowly, then replied calmly. Congratulations. On the other end of the line, I heard his breath catch. Congratulations? Mark repeated, as if he hadn't heard me correctly. I smiled slightly. If that's what you want, then good for you. Then he laughed. A triumphant, smug laugh. I didn't think you'd take it this easily. You do realize, Anna? You have nothing left. The company is sold, and I own the majority of the assets. I glanced at my watch. Just a few more minutes. Is that what you think? I asked, my voice steady. Of course. He nearly burst into laughter. Everything is done. My lawyers have taken care of it all. I hope you won't make this difficult. Won't try to fight for something that's already lost. You know the law isn't on your side. Oh, really? I tilted my head, my voice light as air. Then maybe you should check again, Mark. I hung up before he could react. In that moment, I felt an undeniable sense of relief, as if an invisible chain had just been severed. Mark thought he was the one controlling the game. He had no idea that this entire time, I was the one dealing the cards. As I left the cafe, my phone buzzed with a message from my lawyer. It's done, he can't sell what he no longer owns. A smirk curled at the corner of my lips. The city looked strangely beautiful this evening. Mark thought he could walk away and take everything from me? He had no clue that while he was plotting his betrayal, I was already writing the ending. I drove home, knowing exactly where he would be. Sitting in his favorite chair, wearing that smug grin, convinced that he had won. He thought I would crumble. He had no idea that the real game was just beginning. I parked in front of the house, taking a deep breath. The golden sunset stretched long shadows across the stone-paved driveway leading to the mansion we once called a home. But this place had ceased to be a home long ago. Now it was nothing more than a stage. And tonight the show was about to begin. I stepped through the heavy wooden doors, the rhythmic clicks of my heels echoing through the silent space. Mark was exactly where I expected, lounging, in his favorite armchair, swirling a glass of red wine in his hand. Beside him, Lauren stood by the window, arms crossed. Her tight red dress stood out under the chandelier's warm glow, but the confidence she once carried so effortlessly was no longer there. Mark's lips curled into a condescending smile the moment he saw me. Anna, you're finally home. He tilted his head slightly, his voice dripping with satisfaction. I assume you've had time to think things over. I placed my bag on the table and slowly took a seat across from him. Yes, Mark, and it's fascinating that you think this is already over. Reaching into my briefcase, I pulled out a thick stack of documents and placed them on the table with a decisive thud. He narrowed his eyes, glancing at the stack of papers in front of him. Lauren shifted uneasily, her gaze locked onto me. What is this? Mark asked, his voice strained. I intertwined my fingers, offering him a calm smile. The truth. And I think you should read it before you continue your performance. Mark picked up the documents, flipping through the first few pages. I watched as the color drained from his face while the words sank in. Lauren, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. Mark? Her voice wavered, losing its usual sharpness. He slammed the papers down on the table, his eyes hard as they met mine. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Anna?" Leaning back in my chair, I replied nonchalantly, "Just giving you a reality check." I picked up a single sheet from the stack, reading it slowly. According to the shareholder agreement we signed 5 years ago, no sale or transfer of shares can occur without the approval of all primary stakeholders. And as you can see in these documents, I slid the paper toward him. "I now hold the majority stake." Mark blinked, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "That's impossible," he muttered. "I own 55% of the shares." I shook my head, cutting him off. "You used to own 55%. But while you were busy with your personal affairs," I glanced at Lauren, "I quietly acquired the remaining shares from other investors. I now control over 60% of the company. And do you know what that means, Mark?" I tilted my head, locking eyes with him. A heavy silence filled the room. Lauren looked at Mark, then back at me, panic spreading across her face. No, this can't be. Mark, you told me you had control of the company." I let out a soft chuckle. "Looks like he told you exactly what you wanted to hear." Lauren shook her head, stepping back as if she had just realized she had boarded a sinking ship. "Mark?" she repeated, but this time her voice was filled with desperation. Mark clenched his jaw, gripping his wine glass so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "Anna, you're playing a dangerous game." Not at all." I stood up, retrieving another set of documents from my briefcase. "But this is where things get interesting." I placed the papers in front of him. "Do you remember the $1,200,000 that mysteriously disappeared from the company's internal investment fund? And those contracts you signed with a shell consulting firm in Hong Kong?" Mark froze. Lauren turned pale. I leaned forward, my voice slow but razor sharp. "That's called financial fraud, Mark." I pulled out another stack of documents, my tone ice cold. "I have records of every suspicious transaction you've made over the past 3 years. There's enough evidence here to trigger a full-scale investigation by the SEC and IRS. And guess what? I already sent a copy to my lawyer this morning." Mark shot to his feet, slamming his fist onto the table. "You dare?" I stood up as well, cutting him off. "Dare to do what, Mark? Let you start over with Lauren while burning everything behind you? Did you really think I was that naive?" Lauren gasped, stepping back again before turning to Mark. You lied to me?" Her voice trembled. I crossed my arms, waiting. Mark struggled to maintain his composure, but I could see the fear creeping into his eyes. He turned to Lauren, desperately searching for a way to justify himself, but she was done listening. "Mark, I don't want to be involved in this," she nearly screamed, panic thick in her voice. "You promised me everything would be fine." Then, without another word, she grabbed her purse and rushed out the door without looking back. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving behind an eerie silence. I turned back to Mark. He stood there, his face contorted in a mix of rage and despair. I shrugged, picking up the final stack of documents and placing them gently on the table. "Tomorrow, the board will hold an emergency meeting. And guess what? You won't need to attend. Because as of now, you're officially out of the company." Mark stared at me, still unable to process the reality unfolding around him. I grabbed my bag and turned toward the door. Just before stepping out, I paused, glancing back at him one last time. "You know, Mark," I said softly, almost like a whisper in the wind, "if you had simply asked for a clean divorce, I might have let you walk away without any of this happening." I opened the door, stepping out into the cool night air. "But you chose betrayal." And with that, the door closed behind me. The game is over. Night had fallen over the city, but the glow from my computer screen still flickered steadily in my office. Lines of data scrolled across the monitor. Numbers, transactions, emails, systematically extracted and displayed. Mark might have thought I was just a simple wife, but he had forgotten one critical detail. I am a cybersecurity expert. Before co-founding the company with Mark, I worked for a major tech corporation specializing in financial security. I understood exactly how systems operate, how data can be manipulated, and more importantly, how to expose a fraud. For over a year, ever since my instincts told me that Mark was no longer trustworthy, I had quietly built a sophisticated surveillance system within the company. No one, not even Mark, knew that every single one of his transactions had been monitored all along. I opened an encrypted file, entered a long password, and the system began displaying crucial data. Suspicious transactions. Over $3,800,000 had been siphoned from the company's internal investment fund, funneled into anonymous accounts I had traced to tax havens like the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore. Phantom contracts. Hundreds of thousands of dollars paid for consulting services from companies that didn't exist. Market manipulation evidence. Emails between Mark and a group of brokers, where he secretly inflated the company's value in preparation for a major sell-off. I clicked on a file, opening an audio recording I had extracted from the company's security system. Mark's voice played, clear and unmistakable. "We'll keep pulling money from the company in small amounts. No one will notice. Once the sale goes through, we'll have enough to leave and no one will be able to trace it." I hit pause. The evidence was undeniable. I switched to the real-time financial transaction interface, watching as Mark made one last desperate attempt to move the remaining funds overseas before it was too late. I smirked. "Not so fast, Mark." I activated the security override, blocking all suspicious transactions through the protective system I had spent years building. Within seconds, a red alert popped up on the screen. "Transaction failed. Account temporarily locked." At that moment, my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer David calling. "I just got confirmation from the SEC," his voice rang with excitement. "They've received all the documents you sent and are launching an immediate investigation. The IRS is involved too. Mark won't be able to escape this." I tapped my pen lightly against the desk. "Good. I want them to scrutinize every single transaction, every contract he's signed in the past 2 years." "Don't worry," David assured me. "They won't let him off the hook." I ended the call and gazed out at the city beyond my window. Somewhere across town, Mark was probably panicking, realizing his accounts had been frozen. Maybe he was calling his lawyer, desperately trying to find a way out. But this time, there was no escape. I opened my surveillance system and entered the final command. In an instant, every piece of evidence detailing Mark's fraudulent activities was automatically sent to the investigating agencies, the SEC, the IRS, and even the FBI. A new message popped up from Marcus, a former colleague from the Financial Crimes Division. "The files you sent are enough to open a federal investigation. Mark isn't just facing civil penalties, he could be looking at criminal charges." I typed back a short reply. "Good. I want him to pay for everything." Not long after, an email from the SEC's investigative team landed in my inbox. "We have begun the process of freezing all assets. Any attempt by Mark Harrison to manipulate the market further will be neutralized." I smiled. Everything was falling into place. I took a slow sip of wine, feeling an unusual sense of peace settle over me. Step by step, I had dismantled everything Mark had tried to hide. He thought he was clever. He thought he could betray me, deceive me, and walk away without consequences. But he forgot one thing. I was always one step ahead. One step. And this time, I wouldn't stop. I stood by the window of my office, the city lights reflecting off the glass. The red wine in my glass swirled gently, while my computer screen lit up with an onslaught of messages and notifications, flooding in like a relentless storm. "Anna, you won't believe this. The company's stock is plummeting. Investors are pulling out. Harrison Capital has lost nearly 40% of its value in just 48 hours. The bank just issued a notice. Mark Harrison's accounts have been completely frozen." I leaned back in my chair, my eyes skimming through the breaking headlines dominating the financial news. Mark Harrison's name was everywhere. But this time it wasn't accompanied by smug interviews or images of a wealthy businessman in an expensive suit. The biggest financial scandal of the year. Mark Harrison under investigation for tax fraud and money laundering. Personal accounts frozen worldwide. I took a slow sip of wine, listening to the chaos unfolding across the city. I didn't need to be there to know exactly what was happening. Mark was scrambling, desperate to salvage what little he had left. He had always believed he was in control of the game. But now that everything was crumbling, I wondered, had he realized that I had always been one step ahead? Across the city, Mark stumbled out of the elevator of the luxury hotel where he had been staying. His tie was loosened, his face pale from exhaustion. He had never imagined a day where he would be running from his own life. His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone, dialing frantically. No one answered. His personal attorney? Not picking up. His financial advisor? Cut off all contact. His business partners? All withdrawing their investments. A crushing pressure tightened around his chest. He swallowed hard and rushed out through the hotel's back entrance. A sleek black car was already waiting. He threw himself into the back seat, slamming the door shut. I need a flight to Switzerland, immediately. The driver glanced at the rearview mirror. Mr. Harrison, I think you should check the news before heading to the airport. Mark frowned and opened his banking app. A notification popped up. Account frozen, contact your bank for further details. His breathing grew shallow. He quickly tried logging into another account. A secret account no one was supposed to know about. Account locked under financial investigation order. Mark slammed his fist against the seat. Every escape route had been cut off. While Mark was desperately searching for a way out, Lauren was also trying to save herself. She walked briskly down the sidewalk, clutching her handbag as if it could shield her from the storm about to hit. Her fingers trembled as she dialed Mark's number, but all she got was a dead line. He had promised they would leave together. He had told her he had a plan. He had lied. A taxi pulled up at the curb and Lauren quickly climbed in. JFK Airport. The driver nodded, but just as the car was about to pull away, her phone vibrated. A message from her personal attorney. Lauren, if you're connected to any of Mark's accounts, I strongly advise you to cooperate with the authorities. The FBI is involved. A cold sweat broke out on her forehead. She knew, if she didn't act now, she would be dragged into the scandal alongside him. Her eyes lingered on another message, the one she had sent to me hours ago. A desperate call for help. She had no other choice. She pressed call. Anna, I have information on Mark. I'm willing to turn over everything as long as I get protection. I could hear the panic in her voice, but I had no intention of making this easy for her. I let the silence stretch for a few seconds before replying, my tone calm but razor-sharp. Good. Send me everything. And don't even think about running. I'll know. Lauren trembled as she hung up. I knew she was wondering if she could truly escape this mess. But I also knew she had no other choice. Night had fallen. I stood by my office window, watching the endless stream of headlights moving through the streets below. My phone vibrated, a message from Marcus, the FBI agent. The arrest warrant has been issued. We're moving in soon. I set my wineglass down, a slow smirk forming on my lips. Mark had always believed he could cheat the system and walk away without consequences. He never realized the game was never in his hands. And now it was officially over. I stepped into the grand hall of the Grand Manhattan Hotel, where the annual financial summit was in full swing. All eyes turned toward me as I walked across the long carpeted aisle leading to the speaker's stage. I was no longer Mrs. Harrison, the shadow behind Mark, the wife who existed only as a backdrop at events like these. I was Anna Harrison. And today I would tear down everything Mark had built on lies. Behind me, the massive LED screen lit up with bold, undeniable words. The truth about Harrison Capital, what the market needs to know. The crowd fell silent. Attendees exchanged glances, curiosity and tension thick in the air. I stepped up to the podium, placing my hands on the cold wooden surface. The spotlight shone down, reflecting off my eyes. The eyes of someone who knew exactly how much power she held. I'm sure you've all seen the headlines, I began, my voice strong and unwavering. What we are witnessing is not just the downfall of one man, but a costly lesson in greed and deception. I paused, letting my words settle into the heavy silence before continuing. Harrison Capital was once a powerhouse in the market, but in just a matter of days its entire value has plummeted. Why? I locked eyes with the crowd. Because Mark Harrison lied to all of us. Behind me, the massive screen changed, displaying a series of internal emails, falsified financial reports, and shady transactions I had compiled. Some people in the audience looked down at their phones, likely verifying the information I had just presented. Mark Harrison didn't just deceive me, he deceived investors, partners, and the entire market. He manipulated the company's valuation for personal gain, used investment funds to conceal illegal cash flows, and orchestrated the sale of the company based on fraudulent numbers. I glanced at the front row, where the top executives of the industry's biggest firms sat. My gaze landed on Charles Whitmore, an investor who had previously voiced concerns to me. Mr. Whitmore, I called his name, making the entire hall fall silent. I believe you've received the full financial report on Harrison Capital's true standing. Can you confirm what I've just stated? Charles straightened his posture, adjusted his tie, and gave a firm nod. I've reviewed the data, and everything Miss Harrison has said is entirely accurate. A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. I continued, anyone who has ever done business with Harrison Capital has the right to ask, can this company still be trusted? Do the projects Mark Harrison promised even exist? Can we allow someone like this to continue manipulating the market? I scanned the room, letting my gaze settle on each face. I don't think anyone here wants to continue doing business with a man like that. I didn't need to say anything more. The nods of agreement, the hushed but furious conversations, they said it all. The meeting quickly shifted into an open discussion. One by one, executives and investors publicly severed ties with Harrison Capital, vowing to withdraw from any dealings related to Mark. A message from my assistant flashed on my phone screen. The market has reacted. Harrison Capital's stock continues to nosedive. Competitors have canceled all contracts with Mark. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, a faint smirk playing on my lips. This was something Mark could never control. Once trust is lost, no amount of money can buy it back. The meeting concluded with clear, irreversible decisions. Harrison Capital was officially removed from the business ecosystem, and Mark Harrison no longer had a place in the industry. But what mattered more was what was happening with my company. As the meeting ended, I stepped out of the conference hall and received a call from my finance team. Anna, you need to check the market report right now. I pulled out my phone, quickly scrolling through the numbers flashing across the screen. My company's stock had surged nearly 30% in just one morning. It didn't surprise me. I had spent years building a company with real value, not an illusion like Harrison Capital. Investors saw that now. I stepped out of the hotel, the Manhattan sky looking clearer than ever. Mark once thought he could take me down, steal everything I had worked so hard to build. But he was wrong. Not only had his empire collapsed, but I had risen stronger than ever. Because in the world of business, power doesn't belong to the best liar. It belongs to the one who knows how to turn the truth into their sharpest weapon. The boardroom of Harrison Capital was packed with shareholders. Familiar faces mixed with those I knew had once sided with Mark. Tension hung heavy in the air as they took their seats, their eyes filled with curiosity and unease. I walked in, my dark dress and heels clicking powerfully against the marble floor. No one spoke as I sat down in the chair that Mark once treated like his throne. Behind me, the screen lit up, displaying a series of documents. I tapped my pen lightly against the table, letting the silence stretch before speaking. We have a lot to address today, so I'll get straight to the point, I said, my voice calm yet razor sharp. As you all know, Mark Harrison deceived every single one of us. Some people shifted in their seats, while others remained quiet, waiting for me to continue. I have every piece of evidence documenting Mark's illegal transactions, I continued, emphasizing each word. He attempted to sell this company without the board's consent. But what he didn't realize was that I had already secured enough shares to take full control. A wave of whispers spread through the room. A few board members, those who had once backed Mark, exchanged worried glances. I leaned back in my chair, locking eyes with each person in the room. What does that mean? I tilted my head slightly, my tone calm yet unwavering. It means that anyone tied to Mark will no longer hold power here. I tapped a command on my tablet and the screen behind me changed. A list of board members marked for immediate removal. The individuals on this list either helped Mark cover up his misconduct or actively participated in his scheme to manipulate this company. As of today, they will no longer hold any leadership roles. I signed the document in front of me, making it official. A few murmurs of protest arose, but I didn't care. I had absolute control, and this wasn't a discussion. This was a statement. I turned to the left side of the room, where Charles Whitmore and the loyal investors sat. I have a plan to restructure this company. Not just to repair the damage Mark left behind, but to lead us into a stronger future. I pressed another button on my tablet and the screen shifted again. This time it displayed a new logo. Phoenix Innovation Group. Harrison Capital died with Mark. My voice was steady as I looked around the room. But from its ashes, we will build something stronger. The room fell silent, stunned by what I had just declared. The Phoenix Innovation Group will focus on technology and cybersecurity, a sector Mark always underestimated but one that will be the foundation of our future success. I scanned the remaining board members. I have already secured strategic partnerships to ensure funding for this transition. Anyone who wishes to remain part of this company will need to commit to this new vision. I paused, giving them a moment to absorb the gravity of my words. Then, from the far end of the table, a silver-haired man, one of the major shareholders, spoke up, his voice still tinged with skepticism. Anna, are you certain this change will lead to success? The market is still shaken by everything that has happened. I smiled, locking eyes with him. I'm not certain, I said, my voice brimming with confidence. I'm sure. The room went still. Then, one by one, they nodded. The vote began. Phoenix Innovation Group was officially born. Mark once believed he could take everything from me. But now the company I built had not only survived the storm, it was poised to rise stronger than ever. I hadn't just protected what was mine, I had taken it all back. Sitting in my new office at Phoenix Innovation Group, I gazed out through the floor-to-ceiling glass windows, overlooking the vast Manhattan skyline. From this height, everything below looked small. Just like Mark, now reduced to nothing but a disgraced name tied to a financial scandal. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus, the FBI agent. Mark Harrison was arrested this morning at a private airport in Miami. He was trying to flee to South America with a fake passport. No way out. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the words settle in. I had imagined many possible endings for Mark, but this felt the most fitting. A man who once stood at the top, now being dragged away in handcuffs, caught in the blinding flashes of news cameras? Another message popped up. An unknown number. 1. I should never have trusted him. I should have known he could never protect me. But now it's too late. I didn't need to check the sender. Lauren. I let the message fade into oblivion. She wasn't worth my time anymore. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the latest financial report. Phoenix Innovation Group was soaring. Since the restructuring, the company had attracted massive investments from some of the world's largest funds. Cybersecurity and financial security contracts were pouring in, boosting our company's valuation by 150% in just 3 months. The media had already started calling me the woman behind the new tech revolution. Mark had once thought he could destroy me. But he forgot one thing. I didn't just know how to take revenge. I knew how to rebuild. I stood up, walking toward the window, my eyes fixed on the horizon. The battle was over. But this was just the beginning of an empire no one could bring down. The lesson from my story is simple yet profound. Justice isn't just about destroying a betrayer, it's about rebuilding something stronger from the ashes. Mark thought he could manipulate everything, but he forgot one truth. The truth always finds a way to surface. In business, as in life, trust and integrity are the most valuable assets. Once lost, nothing can bring them back. I didn't just reclaim my company, I built an empire. And the greatest lesson of all? The best revenge is success. What do you think about this story? Do you agree that sometimes the best revenge is success? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss more powerful stories about life, family, and the lessons that truly matter.